Hello and welcome to CGTN and Euronews joint production on artificial intelligence, AI for good. How good can it be? I'm Tian Wei, host of CGTN, and it's such a pleasure to work with my colleague Olaf.
Yes, indeed. Wei, I am Olaf Bruns, a European affairs journalist based in Brussels, and I'm co-hosting this debate for Euronews from Lyon, France. And I'm delighted, Wei, really, that we're partnering for this very important debate today.
Yes, indeed. And artificial intelligence is increasingly seen as transformative force globally. It has tremendously changed the landscape of education, technological development, and healthcare practices. Millions have been benefiting from it. However, concerns are also cropping up. The unpredictability of AI technologies, the equity challenges it has created, and the governance of the technology, just to name a few. So today, we have invited those in the know in this technology, hoping to share information, ideas, and aspirations through this conversation.
Indeed, Wei. Many people see, or are beginning to see, AI's enormous potential. But there's also a sense of uncertainty. People are wondering what we are really up to. And sometimes there's even a bit of fear that something is going out of control here, or at least that something might be going out of control. Which is why there is an international effort to set the rules and fix the governance. So what we're trying to do here today is to showcase some of the examples of AI for good, which are the fields where AI is already used for good, and what are the challenges we need to face to make sure AI works for the good of humankind. To do this, we have assembled a high-level panel of experts from China, Europe, and beyond.
So now let's loop in our distinguished guests. Zeng Yi, Professor of AI from Chinese Academy of Sciences. He is also the co-director of AI for SDGs Cooperation Network. Dr. Amr Awadallah, who is the CEO and co-founder of Vectara. He previously served as VP of Developer Relations for Google Cloud. Welcome to both of you.
And we have Rose Luckin, who has been working in AI in education for 30 years now. Currently, she's a professor of learner-centered design at the University College London's Knowledge Lab. And we have Srikant Chakravarti, co-founder and co-CEO of Curio AI, an app that uses generative AI to function as an AI co-pilot for news. Welcome both of you.
Welcome, everyone. Now, we know so much about the technologies for now, and yet it's developing very fast. At the same time, people expect the technology to serve both the realities and the future. So from where you are, with your expertise, how is AI doing good wherever you are? Let's go with Yi first.
Well, I think when we are talking about AI for good, we're talking about AI for ecology and human good. Not only human, but also ecology. So that means for the well-being of human and ecology. There are many ways that you can use AI for human and ecology good. Let's say you don't understand what is the relationship among human, other animal species, and other plants all over the world. So you can use AI to do analysis, to draw the network of human to other animals and also to all the kind of plants, so that you bring a biodiversity network that help you to understand the relationship among human and the other living beings. And there's another example that AI can be used for good. That is to use AI to do cultural interactions, not only cultural heritage, that you recorded everything related to culture, but really to find the relationship among different cultures, so that AI tells about commonalities among different cultures, so that you realize how you are connected to each other. Well, AI also can be used to find the differences among culture, where you appreciate the differences, so that the differences complement with each other for the society. So yeah, I think this is the beginning, only the beginning of how AI can be used for both human and ecology good.
Amr, I saw you nodding already, so I would like to throw that same question to you. Like your first thoughts on AI for good, really, like the first association that comes to mind.
I mean, the first thing that would come to mind is actually education, right? So I think one of the very primary uses of AI today that is helping many kids at schools and universities across the world is now they can ask the AI to explain to them any complex topic like quantum physics, for example, at any level, starting from the level of a kindergarten child to the level of an advanced PhD student in quantum physics. And so I think that's absolutely one of the most impactful uses of this new wave of generative AI. Many students in the world don't have access to great teachers, and now they're going to have an amazing teacher in their pocket. Same thing for health. Like health will be the same thing. There's many people in the world that don't have access to an amazing doctor that can help them diagnose the headache they're having or the stomach ache they're having. Now they're going to have an amazing doctor in their pocket. So that would be the most impactful immediate use cases I see for AI.
Well, Amr is talking about amazing teacher in the pocket. We have a teacher actually sitting among our panelists, an educator. Rose, what do you think how AI is now serving the good? What are the most important areas do you think it can focus on in terms of education?
Absolutely. Well, I agree with Amr. There's a lot can be done in terms of providing that tutoring support for learners that's individualized to their needs. But there's also a lot of other things beyond generative AI. A piece of AI that I use every day is speech to text. And that's actually really powerful for people who can't use a keyboard, for example. So it gives them access to interactions, access to education. There's many ways that we can use the AI in education to analyze student performance so that we can do formative assessment and provide nuanced feedback to the student, to the educator. We can now forensically examine the way that a student is learning to help them be better at learning. So there's huge potential in the education space for AI to help us when we remember that what AI does is analyze huge amounts of information very quickly and then acts according to the goals that AI has been designed to achieve. So there's huge potential in the education space without question.
Perhaps moving from this specific area of education to the field of this very sensitive good we are having, which is information. Srikant, you are in this nexus between AI and journalism. From your background, what are your first thoughts that come to mind, AI for good? Where can it really play a role in advancing humankind?
We all know that news is extremely powerful, right? I mean, we call it the software that powers the world, and our opinions, our actions, and everything, right? And for the first time, I think with generative AI, what you have is an opportunity to actually turn just information into real-time knowledge. Actually, allow people to it democratizes the access of high-quality, trusted journalism across the globe, right? And actually, it can be used to take the human created journalism and then situate it in people's lives in a way that actually transforms the relationship with journalism and news, right? So today we are gamed relentlessly with a barrage of breaking news and just, and everybody feels overwhelmed with the news, or, they feel they want to cut off from the news. But you don't need to game people, right? I mean, we can actually use generative AI and build a relationship with the news. So we have a personal companion talking to you, giving you what you need and what you want, and you can actually then tailor that to your own interests, right? And actually, as I think Rose was saying, it can also then deliver that to you at a time that's convenient for you, right? In a way that's convenient. Is it in text? Is it in audio, right? And if people cannot read, but they can understand and listen, then they can listen, right? And so it can actually be delivered to you in a way that is designed for deeper consumption. It can actually nudge you in ways to say that, okay, how would you like Yi was saying, like, you've listened or you've read this perspective, would you like to engage with an alternative perspective? So it almost is allowing you to we can actually reframe the complete relationship that people have with the news and make it healthier and actually make it the tool that can actually inform people in a way to make much better decisions for themselves.
I would just like to throw in a quick follow-up, Srikant, perhaps a little bit more precisely on what you are doing. So your app, you call it an AI co-pilot. I am just wondering, what does the AI co-piloting here? And if there's a co-pilot, who's the pilot?
Well, it's a great question, Olaf, right? And well, AI is co-piloting along with you, right, as the consumer of news, because you know what you want, you know what, and the AI can help you basically get what you want in the most fulfilling way possible, right? So essentially, say if we're partnering with a bunch of trusted sources, right, and what you get is, imagine if you can basically get a diversity of opinions, diversity of news across, all the areas of interest and requirements that you have, but knowing that they are trusted sources, and then the co-pilot is able to basically give it to you in a way that makes sense for you, right? Say, Olaf, you're already an expert in AI, right? Now, immediately the co-pilot may say that, okay, you know what, you don't need to know this immediate primer of, this is what generative AI means, but actually can tell you that, okay, this is the latest development today because I already know what you get, right? And it may give you something that is much more interesting for you, right? Or you're interested in European politics, and then something which never happens generally is that you can say, oh, here is a parallel that's happening in Asian politics, and maybe you want to see what's happening over there, just as a means of understanding how it's being handled in other places in the world. So as a co-pilot, it's basically taking the human-created journalism and actually situating it for you and helping to, for you to consume it more deeply and in a more constructive manner.
However, I have to confess, as a journalist now using some of the latest apps based on AI technology, hallucination is a huge problem. And the accuracy of information is another problem. I know that you are working around the clock to solve all these problems. But, related to that, what is really behind AI? I mean, whose hands is AI in? Well, we are talking about applications and trying to take advantage of the AI technology, but who is actually there designing all these latest apps? And are they really in the hands of many, or are they only in the hands of a few, particularly a few gigantic companies in the world? Amr, I guess that's a question needs to be addressed to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's two questions that you brought up. The first one was the issue of hallucinations, which is very important that anybody using AI systems be aware of it. Is these AI systems are still suffering from an issue where they can sometimes make up words that sound very correct, but are actually not factual. They're communicating something that is not correct. And then if you depend on that, for example, for a doctor consultation, when you're trying to diagnose a disease, or you depend on that for a legal contract, or even for education, then you might end up in very significant trouble. So absolutely, one of the key things that everybody leveraging AI systems should be aware of is they can suffer from that. And I mean, that's one of the key problems that actually my company, Vectara, helps solve. Is ground the AI in the truth, so it avoids doing these things which can lead to significant liability. Now, on your other question of who controls the AI, a couple of years ago, I would have been very concerned about it, where there was a few companies that really were controlling the AI systems, like OpenAI, for example. But what happened over the last 2 years is a number of organizations started to produce and release open source AI models. And that now allows the AI to be in the hands of everybody, right? So that really opened up the accessibility and prevents one or two companies like the mega vendors in the world to control the AI system. So I'm very, very optimistic because of that, and because of now the prevalence of these open models that are very, very capable and in the hand of anybody that would like to do great things with them.
Yi, perhaps we have now with Amr already been touching a little bit on the sort of risk, or at least the challenges we hear. I would like to zoom a little bit open. Somewhere I read that when you first realized that you wanted to work with AI, you somewhere said you realized this is really what you wanted to do, and I quote, to build a robot that can love the human species. So my question to you would be, is this dream fulfilled now? Does AI love humans, and do humans love it back?
No, definitely not at this point. So I think this is my dream when I was a first-year bachelor student watching the movie Artificial Intelligence. So this is still my dream as a career as a professor of artificial intelligence. But I would have to say the current AI is still an information processing tool that seems to be intelligent, that pretend that they are intelligent, that persuade you to trust that they are intelligent, but actually not. They've been always saying, I think, I suppose, I would suggest, I guess. But the truth is that it's a tool. There's no I at the back of the current artificial intelligence. So what they are doing is data analytics, statistical significance. What they're definitely not is an emotional agent. Now they are not, and maybe for years they will not be. Simply because now the current technology and the way we're pushing forward to it is only to build a general purpose information processing tool. And we have to be very cautious to bring the right information to the general public. Now, the AI now, they seem to be intelligent, but they make mistakes that human will never make. So there are no trustworthy AI. The level of trustworthiness has to be built up so that you can get a better information processor instead of a agent that can be moral and responsible. Now they're not. It's still the human who should be responsible for the technology.
Yi, I know you and your colleagues are participating often in the discussion organized by the United Nations on AI governance and AI for good. But I would also like to address this question to other panelists here. Rose, for example, recently we hear from the year 2017, the United Nations has always been having this AI for Good summit, bringing all the stakeholders together. But to you, what is the most important and urgent task when we touch on AI for good as an educator and beyond? As we know, AI for good touches on so many different views: education, healthcare, environmental protection, disaster relief, and social impacts, and the list goes on. Please.
Absolutely. The most important thing at the moment is to increase everybody's understanding of AI. Because whilst I agree with Amr that the situation has improved with open source models, I'm still really concerned about the power imbalance. The power is really still in a small people's hands because not enough people understand enough about AI to be able to leverage it for their own benefit. So there's a real urgent need to help populations understand enough about AI, not to build AI, but to use it safely and effectively, because the regulation will never keep up with the advances in technology. But actually, the thing that worries me the most is that we need to be much clearer about what relationship we want to have with artificial intelligence. The conversation about co-pilots, I understand. I think AIs are great as assistants. But in order to have the right relationship with that assistant, we need to be clear about what aspects of our thinking we're willing to allow the AI to do, and what aspects of our thinking it's important that we keep for ourselves. Because once we stop doing them, once we hand them over, we won't be able to do them anymore. Now, maybe that doesn't matter, but I think in some instances it really does matter. So two things. First of all, we really need to increase the education for the populations about AI. And secondly, we need to be much clearer about what kind of relationship we want to exist between human and artificial intelligence to make sure that we develop the AIs that build the right relationships with us, and we build within people the intelligence to know how to build the right relationships with the AI.
Rose, perhaps a follow-up here.
We can also come to this question. So I think there are many important updates that I can share. Can I?
I would just ask a short follow-up to Rose. You were just saying we need to be clear about the relationship we want to have, perhaps in one sentence only. What kind of relationship should we be having?
We should have one where we are in charge. I really worry that because we're being given the impression by the AI developers and by the AI itself that it is capable of doing more than it actually is capable of doing, that we will see an easy life ahead, that we will therefore think that we can allow the AI to do some of the things we find really hard. And when it comes to learning and education, learning is hard work. It's strenuous mental effort. It doesn't come easily. So we need to be careful that we use this opportunity of having artificial intelligence to make us more intelligent. This is a call to action for all of us to become more intelligent.
Rose is talking about we and who is
that we dumb down.
Rose is talking about we, who is in the driver's seat, but then who is we? That is another question, isn't it? Are we collectively having the same consensus, doing the right thing with the same aspiration, or we have, quote unquote, have our different interests and therefore approach the issue in a very different way? One person's good isn't necessarily another person's good. These are all fundamental questions, I guess, we're answering. Yi, you want to ask something?
Yeah, I think I wanted to comment on your question about who should we follow, and there are different ideas and perspectives and how should we deal with it. So I think this is the value for the efforts from the United Nations, that last year they established the United Nations high-level advisory body on AI, where I'm one of the members for the body. And actually, just an hour ago, that the high-level advisory body released its final report on governing AI for humanities. This is for the inputs for the United Nations and General Assembly Summit for the Future, which will be discussed 2 days later together with all the member states. So by that, it's calling for global AI governance. And many of the ideas coming from the high-level advisory body is that we need to have an international scientific panel on AI where we bring scientific AI to the right direction. It also talks about policy dialogue on AI governance, where exactly dealing with the question that you are talking about, that when we are having different perspectives, how can we find the interoperabilities among each other, but still to coordinate and collaborate? And of course, AI standard exchange. And most importantly, that I see is capacity development network that the United Nations high-level advisory body proposed. That is to help, the low and middle income countries on capacity building and development for them to bring AI technologies and services for them. It also talks about a global fund for AI and also global data framework. Most importantly is that the United Nations need a AI office to coordinate efforts from different regional networks and efforts from 193 different countries. The United Nations is not unifying all the efforts. It serves as a networking that weave all the efforts together and complement with all the existing mechanisms. So I think this is very important.
Yi, thank you so much. You're throwing so many subjects at us, which we will need to pack out now bit by bit. And indeed, you're bringing up the question of development, for example, and it is true for all economies, are they developed or developing, there is no country that can just ignore AI. And if used properly, it will absolutely accelerate economic development, but it also gives some countries enormous advantages in the international technological competition. So perhaps, Amr, what does the future hold for AI in this particular field? Cooperation or more competition?
If we just look at technology in general first, before we talk about AI, whenever there is any new technology that comes our way that can improve our efficiency significantly, there will be lots of opportunity to monetize that technology and create significant economical benefits as a function of it. So, for example, if you look at the Industrial Revolution, when we figured out how we can use machines to make clothes and make cars and build buildings way quicker than ever before, that absolutely was something that created lots of wealth and improved the world in a very significant way. That said, the Industrial Revolution also led to all the weapons that led to World War I, that then ended up with millions of people, unfortunately, dying for no good reason, in my opinion. And then again, with nuclear energy and atomic energy, we had amazing evolution in terms of how we can make new sources of energy for everything around us. But at the same time, we had the nuclear bomb, and we had lots of people die needlessly because of that. So one of the key things that I would love to see the United Nations and many countries collaborate on is how to prevent something like this happening now with AI. Like AI coming in can be used in warfare in very, very scary ways, including controlling weapons and firing weapons really, really fast, or even robots. And there is like small dogs with guns on their back that can hunt down humans really fast. So if we can get the countries to collaborate to prevent that from first having the lesson of a lot of people dying before we agree not to use technology in that way, then I think that will make me a lot more sleep much more better at night. I always like to say that technology is not the reason why we get problems. Humans are the reason why we get problems if we use technology in the wrong way.
That's really an interesting answer. Leads us to another question. You think about the other industrial revolutions, in which you mainly have the most developed economies being in the driver's seat, if we still use that analogy. But now it comes to a time when you also have a large emerging economies and also developing countries that are very innovative. Actually, they could incorporate their local factors into the best advantage when using new technologies, such as artificial intelligence. And therefore, you have several drivers, not just the same one for everything. How is that likely to bring us a new momentum of how this technology will become equitable in the near future? I would love to have those of you who have not discussed it yet, Srikant and also Rose, please.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I completely get the, obviously, as Amr was saying, right, and as Rose says, I completely get the concern and you know and the skepticism around what could happen over here, right, and the history, as you were asking. But I do genuinely think that we can't underestimate the impact of the making the fundamental models open source this time around, right? Because I mean, if you think back to if you go back to the Industrial Revolution, the technology of those machines was with certain countries. It wasn't made open source. Anybody else who had to try it had to develop it from scratch. So there was a big lag over there, right? Whether it was for the machines, for the guns, for anything over there. The same thing with nuclear technology. The same thing even with the internet and, you know, the algorithms of Google or Facebook or TikTok, right? I mean, it's all opaque. It's all with certain big organizations or big companies, and nobody else is able to work with them. Yes, in this situation, it's the big companies and the wealthy countries who have the resources to work on and build those models. But in making those models open source, suddenly what you have is everybody in other places being able to work on them. Are they able to work on it with the same amount of resources? No, but they're already able to work on them, right? And they're already able to work on smaller models. We're already getting, you know, hardware chips that are being developed, which are going to be much cheaper and being able to, you know, process much more information much faster. So in a couple of years, I would expect the cost of GPUs as well to actually fall massively, right? Which is again going to democratize. So I think one thing over here is, for me, I almost feel like this goes back to more than the Industrial Revolution. It goes back to almost like Prometheus and fire being given to humanity and everybody else, and everybody being able to sort of almost figure out how to harness the fire, rather than you know, a very closed aspect of certain places only controlling the technology. So I really wouldn't. For me, I wouldn't underestimate the power of that open source technology and making that open source. And then you then combine that with what Amr was saying and what Yi is saying in terms of making countries work together or making individuals work together. But that, I think, can actually foster a lot more of the innovation over there, right? It may bring a competition, which is not a bad thing. but it can also bring about more collaboration.
And I'd add to that, I agree. And I think there's a huge opportunity here for developing world countries to actually leapfrog some of the more developed countries, because they can be more flexible, they can act more quickly, they may have less resource, but they're not constrained by the big systems that we have in a lot of developed nations that actually stop us from being innovative. So I think there is a real opportunity. But in order for those developing countries to leverage that opportunity, they need to build capacity, they need to build understanding. So it's really important that those collaborations that we're talking about help educate those populations quickly and effectively so that they can leverage the benefits of these open source models. And actually, I think there's a huge potential there that they can lead the way in some of the new developments. We hear loads of conversations about killer apps when it comes to AI. I do not believe in the killer app at all. I think what we're going to see is somebody being really innovative about doing business in a totally new way, something way beyond my thinking at the moment, but something really innovative. And I wouldn't mind betting that it will come from a smaller country who thinks differently. If we can give them the power and we can give them the technologies, I think we can see some amazing developments coming in this way. And that would be really wonderful for increased equity.
This brings to mind a very concrete example. A few years ago, I did a report for Euronews and I interviewed a young lady from Mombasa in Kenya who was teaching mothers in the outskirts of Mombasa coding. Essentially with the ideas, these mothers are tied to their homes because they have children, and with this, like once they know to do the coding, they can have jobs and they can have an income at their homes, because there is jobs now that you you work for 2 hours and then you can be busy with your kids again. But I just taking this as an example, it still are jobs that are somehow second class, second order jobs. It's not the proper developing jobs here, which this is just an example, of course, I agree this, but this was happening in Kenya, and this was not sort of Kenyan original AI development. So how to make sure that in smaller countries, in countries that have less access to education, also to good education, this development potential can really be realized? Yi, perhaps a few thoughts.
Well, I would have to say, firstly, for those underdeveloped countries, what they are lack of now is not only AI technology itself, but also the information and telecommunication infrastructure. And now they even do not have the networking that is required for many of the larger scale data training and AI services. So in the first place, we need to build the capacities and bring the capacity development capabilities for them. We need to build networking and data infrastructures for them, and on top of that, you can help them to develop AI models and services, or help them to teach them to build models themselves, or to bring services for them. Well, on the other hand, I will have to say, by using AI services, of course, that will bring new opportunities, as you discussed. But of course, that there will be more challenges then. So the way of defining what do we mean by work will be fundamentally changed for the future. For the work that now do not consider as jobs, let's say, do services for the elderly in your family or in your society, or taking care of your children, maybe another kind of new jobs that is very required for human and humane intelligence, just from human, not from the machines. But these are new considerations for future of work that may be very different compared to now. AI bring new jobs. It will also help us to reconsider what do we mean by human, what human exactly needed to do for our society, for our community. I think it's the time for human to reconsider ourselves and our community.
Interestingly, it also coincides with this round of rethinking of globalization, as we have seen some side effects of globalizations earlier. Having said that, though, it's not just equitable among economies and countries, but also equitability within societies. And we see wealth gap, knowledge gap, information gap in our society these days. It's all over the world. So will AI this time be the transformative force to bring new momentum to change that, or exacerbate what we already have, what our worries are? Amr, your thoughts?
No, it will absolutely help. It will absolutely help neutralize that barrier. Like, as you correctly highlighted, in many countries, they don't have as good education systems as in the first world countries. And now, even if they don't have good networking infrastructure, by the way, I mean, these models are getting so small, they can fit on our phones. And there is new phones now that are being produced that will make that. I mean, all the new phones around us are now integrating AI in them inherently. So that poor students that might be in a third world country that is in a classroom with 100 other students with a teacher that's mediocre, he's now going to suddenly, he or she now are going to suddenly have the best teacher in the world sitting with them on their phone. In the same way that YouTube also helps teach lots of students around the world right now. So I'm very, very optimistic from that front, actually. It's going to reduce the barrier for third world countries to find information, adopt information, and leverage it. And there is many studies that I'm sure Rose are familiar with that show you that if you have a dedicated teacher that's teaching you one-on-one versus being in a classroom with 100 other students when you're very young, then as you grow, the probability of you being smarter or better goes up considerably. I mean, it's 2 standards of deviations better if you have that one-on-one teacher available to you. And now they're going to have that. They're going to have that in their phones. So I think I'm very, very optimistic on that front, actually.
If it's a good teacher, yes.
Yes, we also want to touch on governance, but Rose, we are on education now. So yes, please, your thoughts, your direct reaction to Amr.
We just have to be super careful here, because the AI will never be as good as a good human teacher. And so we do need to be careful that we don't end up by default doing
I disagree.
Human teachers.
I disagree. Rose.
Oh, absolutely.
So we can agree to disagree.
Absolutely, we can, because education is all about that, building that relationship. I do think AI can have a super useful role. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely think it can have a super useful role, but I think we've got to be very careful about it. I also think we as humans need to make sure that the outcome is good. I think, yes, I believe for 29 of the 30 years I've worked in this area, that AI could be a huge force for increased equity, greater access to education, exactly as you're describing. The last year or so, I've become slightly worried that actually we might be getting in the way of that as humans. So I think we as humans have to decide that we're going to make that the reality, because certainly AI can help us to achieve that, but it's up to us to make the right decisions, to work together, to make sure that we do bring the good quality educational tools to people across the world, and that we do recognize the value of the human educator and the unique role that they play within the social experience of learning.
The transformations of roles that human would play in all different sectors as a result of application of AI will be fascinating for many debates, I'm sure, in the future. But Srikant, please join us.
Yeah, no, I have a slightly different view, right? I mean, from Rose, which is that actually, I feel like what Yi was saying, it's more important, I think, in this place to sort of increase the infrastructure and increase the access and allow more of countries and societies to actually engage with this, right? Now, what is good is very subjective, right? What may be good for a certain place is not necessarily good for another place. What may be good for somebody in a certain situation may not be that over here. And fundamentally, I believe that having this sort of like an education, almost sort of actually narrows down the concept of what is good, right? And can actually serve only certain interests, right? And so it's what I would actually believe is you're increasing the access to these places to the technology, to this and to the AI, right? And frankly, people will educate themselves, right? I mean, you know what they do, right? They learn it, they figure it out, and then they figure out how to use it for what is best for themselves, right? And actually, I think that access to that technology is, I genuinely don't feel like educating them needs to be like a prerequisite before actually, sort of going with the technology, right? And in fact, I think as the access improves, there can be more of an exchange of education simply because there is actually an easier way for translating what each of the other communities feels, knows, and has around, right? And it may bring about different sorts of power equations in the world, and then therefore the definitions of good change again. But I think that's how it should be developing, or that's how we build better equity there.
Just
My
one
final
point on
follow-up
this. I think,
very briefly,
if I may,
Rose,
one very
before we
quick
move on
point.
to the other speaker, please.
I think the most important thing is that however we use these technologies, they help people become good at learning, because that's what really matters. If we can use these technologies to help people to become good at learning, to understand themselves as learners, then we give them a very powerful tool for whatever they need to do in their lives and however they are going to interact with the AI. So I think what's really important about the way that we enable people through these tools is that we enable them to be good at learning.
Yeah. Well, the enabler is not just a mobile phone or the electronic or the electricity or a mobile phone, but rather also funds, talents, technologies. All of these are very important enablers. Yi, as a result of this, there is a flow in the world of talents, of funds, of technologies. How do we make sure, since you are joining that United Nations discussion, those are going to be allocated also in some of the economies or in the sectors of society that now are lacking of all these resources?
So I think this is one of the reasons that the United Nations advisory body is suggesting to have the global AI fund, where you need to bring equity for the use of AI and services for AI, leaving no one behind. Now, artificial intelligence is actually extending the gaps, from digital gaps to AI gaps now. So we have to make sure that the infrastructures and also the services has brought to everyone. So not only to have a global AI fund, but really to have capacity development network supported by different countries that are collectively helping each other to bring these different levels of capacities all over the world to remove these barriers and remove these gaps.
I like that, but let's move on to the next part, which is so closely related to what you just said. You talk about countries, you talk about economies, let's collectively do something. But the rules of AI governance is so different from one place to another. The UN, after working on this from 2017, still hasn't come up with any specific ones that everybody will accept. So how can we collectively work together? Plus, there's geopolitics. Plus, there's different factors of economic growth that are troubling us right now. So how do we see this going to happen? Let me go to Amr, first of all, from the business sector. What do you think? Entrepreneurs, be promising.
So first, I agree with you that this is a very hard and potentially concerning problem, meaning that the companies by themselves, they will only do the things that make profits. They're not gonna, sometimes that aligns with good, but it's not gonna always align with good, right? So there will be some very important non-profit kind of things that AI can be very, very helpful for example, detecting and preventing child abuse, which is a very, very significant problem across the world. And companies are not incentivized to go and do that. So governments will need to, charities and nonprofits or governments will need to dedicate programs to leveraging AI in that way for these kind of problems. And again, that's not just an AI specific thing. This is a technology business thing. Like in general, businesses will go after where the money is. They're not going to go after where the good is. Sometimes they're aligned, but sometimes the governments need to step in and do what's good.
Look, Amr is there with a very candid, from the business side, very candid admission how things work in the world, and that is companies go where the business are. So I would like to stay for a second in that business domain, and Srikant, from your side, but moving this to this very sensitive topic of information. What is your stance on sort of the ideal governance you could imagine for AI that makes sure that, and coming back also to our departing question, that AI really is for good?
Yeah, I think for me, it's more like I genuinely cannot see how the whole globe, or like a large set of countries across the globe, will agree on a single set of, safeguards, a set of regulatory ideas saying this is how AI should be used, right? Because going back to
but we have done that for gene editing and nuclear energy. We have done it before.
Yes, but I think gene editing or nuclear energy feels like a lot more almost fundamental to humanity, right? Like nuclear energy, you'll almost like say, okay, it will, you've seen the aspect that it will destroy millions of people right away, right? But with
AI can do that as well.
Yeah, it can. I'm not saying it can't, right? And what I'm coming to is almost that I think the way I feel the best way of getting regulation for AI would be almost to look at the different applications of AI, right? And then you're sort of saying, how are you regulating the use of AI or the output from AI in those applications, right? So coming to, say, information or journalism, right? The question is then, okay, how are you, or how are governments going to consider, say, news output from an AI, right? And how are they going to regulate that, right? I mean, are they going to regulate it in the same way that they regulate news organizations? Or are they going to regulate it in the way they not regulate it at all and call it a tech company, right? Similarly, if AI is being used in health, right, and it's going to be used in medical advice, then would they like to then hold it to the same standards like they do with any company that's developing any new medicine or providing medical advice, or a doctor that's providing medical advice? And how are they delivering that to those standards? And there you will be able to find, for specific things, you could be able to find far more global kind of consensus, because a lot of these things you have consensus around the world anyway, in terms of medical standards, in terms of education standards, in terms of news standards, and things like that, or weapons standards, for example, right? Then there will be certain areas where you can be the Wild West and sort of figure out how you're sort of going to go out there and innovate, because ultimately you will need some of that to actually go and innovate, right? You can't just only innovate in small steps, because ultimately you will have to figure out, okay, how am I conducting a big nuclear test somewhere out in the ocean and figuring out what the power of the nuclear bomb, right? And so you will need to do that. So for me, I would feel like that's how they're then able to work with specific industries, but also not look at AI as this one single sort of entity which can be regulated in a similar way, but almost look at, okay, what are the applications, and then regulate it in accordance with the specific applications.
Very interesting, Srikant. What you have argued, the kind of governance, Yi, to you, we think about global governance. Usually we refers to the earlier example, set after World War II, as a model for other global governance, whether new technologies or new economic factors. But is that still applicable today, given the fact that this technology is new, AI, and it could do different things compared to, let's just say, nuclear, or compared to earlier industrialization? So what's your thought about that? What should be the structure that we can rely on, or should we need the new one, new toys?
What we can learn from climate actions and also nuclear control is that you need an international agency or body to take care of everyone, to coordinate and weave all the regional efforts all together. So what the office or agency has to do is to find the interoperabilities among these differences. You cannot agree on everything, but you can agree on some fundamental principles in the first place, and then to use the interoperabilities to talk to each other when you're having different systems of laws for technologies like AI. So I believe that there will be, now we are having the EU AI Act. I would not be surprised that if the United States and other countries like China release their own AI Act or laws later. But most importantly is that how the kind of agency or office can help to interoperate among these different systems, institutions, so that global governance is still applicable. So I think I'm still very positive that when we laying a foundation for fundamental principles in the first place, fundamental values altogether, and by using interoperabilities, relying on a international office or agency, we will success again for governing AI. But we have to be very cautious, not only to near-term risks and safety problems, but also to long-term challenges, because later is too late.
Now
yeah,
we're
exactly.
moving.
That's what we want to avoid, later too late.
Yeah, we're moving towards the end. So, but Yi is just proposing something very tangible, very concrete, and I would just do a quick round, everybody's thoughts on this very concrete proposal in UN agency on AI. Just your thoughts. Is that the right way to go? Is that realistic, or whatever comes to mind? But just a few very very short sentences. Srikant, perhaps starting with you.
If it can happen, especially around laying down certain baselines of use of AI and regulating the use of AI, great. I mean, and then you're able to sort of work with those certain guardrails in place, right? And whether it can happen, really, how much the UN can actually make happen without each specific country specifically agreeing and enacting things remains to be seen. But if it does happen, it's great.
Amr, perhaps just a few thoughts in a UN agency.
I mean, I expressed my opinion earlier. Is World War I and World War II were very, very intertwined with technology, and they taught us very, very expensive lessons in terms of human life lost. And if there's one thing the UN or the world needs to align on, is AI applied to warfare. That can be extremely, extremely damaging to the human civilization, and we need to learn from our past lessons and try to avoid that from happening, than waiting until it happens and then we try to fix it when it's too late.
Rose, perhaps just a thought on an AI agency?
Absolutely, I'm for it. Innovative technology requires innovative regulation. We need to be more innovative in the way we regulate. We've got to move with the times, and I think it's a great suggestion. And I would add to it, we have to have the education programs to go alongside it, because we'll still struggle for the regulation to keep up with the technology innovation. So it's not an either or. I think it has to be both.
AI for good, how can it be? This is a fascinating discussion. I'm sure based on today's conversation, there will be many discussions for the future. I want to thank all of you for providing us all of these fascinating insights. And I'm sure this technology, while it's developing, there will be more potential for international cooperation on governance and to make it best serve the interests of all human beings in our shared future. Here, I would like to thank all our guests and our media partner, Euronews. Thank you so much for joining us.
Wei, let me join you in thanking our guests for their deep insights and for this very nuanced and sometimes also controversial debate. And thank you for this great cooperation with CGTN. I think we really end this with a lot of food for thought on the future of AI for everybody. So really, thanks a lot. And even if this particular debate is over, the discussion on AI is, of course, ongoing. Bye-bye.
And that's all the time we have for today. AI for Good, a joint production between CGTN and Euronews. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team from both sides, thanks for being with us. Bye for now.